I came here today to deliver a very important message to you. You all are superheroes. I know you didn't know that until now, but you're superheroes. And you've been given a very important mission. Your mission is to use the superpowers that you were given to shape your own future and to make this world a better place to live. You've been each given unique superpowers. Some of you have the power of athleticism. I hope that's most of you here. Some of you have the power of music. Others have the power of knowledge or wisdom. And I could go on and on listing all of your unique superpowers. But today I want to talk about 4 superpowers that you all have in common. They are the power of choice, the power of association, the power of love, and the power to intervene. My son Chase loved superheroes. He really loved movies about superheroes, and his favorite of all the superhero movies was the Spider-Man series. I remember sitting there watching that very first Spider-Man movie with Chase. And I'll never forget that scene where Uncle Ben turned to Peter Parker and he said, "With great power comes great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility." It seems like responsibility is a 4-letter word sometimes. But I would encourage you to embrace responsibility. Chase was a good athlete. He started out like you, playing baseball, and he played soccer. And then eventually played football, and he gave up all of his other sports to focus strictly on football. And he had a really good season his senior year of high school. In fact, he earned a football scholarship. But it was while he was in college on that football scholarship that Chase forgot what Uncle Ben said about power and responsibility. He became irresponsible with the power of choice and the power of association. He began to associate with people who were abusing drugs and alcohol. You see, you become like the people you associate with. It's really hard to make good grades in college when you party all the time. You can't do it. He got kicked out of college, came back home, and he began taking up with a rough crowd at home. He lost a lot of weight really fast. He was looking really bad. He was getting pale looking, eyes glassy all the time. And it got so bad that I really got scared. And I held an intervention for Chase at our house, and we got him into rehab. We went to a rehab facility in Florida. He was in there for 30 days, and he spent another 60 days in a halfway house. Now, this all happened really fast. I'm talking about within about a year's time. From the time he left college to the time he was in rehab. He got better, and he came back home, and he intentionally was staying away from those people who had led him down a bad path. He was doing well. He got a job, and he was enjoying his work. Seemed to be doing a lot better. But over a period of time, I began to notice some subtle differences, some changes, and I knew what was happening, but I was powerless to do anything about it, really. Chase was beginning to relapse. He was beginning to hang out with some of those people again. So Chase came to me one day and he said, "Dad," he said, "I know I'm hanging around a rough crowd here. And I know they're a bad influence on me, and I'm headed in a bad direction." And he said, "I really don't know how to sever ties with these people except to move." And he said, "I've already taken a job transfer down to Florida, back where I was in rehab." And he said, I'm going to move in with an older gentleman that I met in rehab who has his own place there. And I tried to talk Chase out of moving, but he had already made up his mind. And he promised my wife that before he left to go to Florida that he would come by and have a meal with us. Well, the day that he was supposed to leave came, and there was no Chase. We called him, we texted him, no response. So my wife was beginning to get a little upset because it was getting later in the afternoon. We hadn't heard from him, and she thought, well, maybe he already left, and he didn't come by and see us before he left. About that time, I had a phone call on my cell phone from a friend. And I didn't want to disturb my wife and my other son, Justin, who were watching television in the living room. So I went outside in the front yard to talk on the phone to my friend. And as I was standing in my front yard, a Raleigh police cruiser pulled up to the curb in front of my house. And this police officer got out of his cruiser, started around the front end, had a clipboard in his hand. And I told my friend, I said, I need to go. Chase is in some kind of trouble. So I hung up. And I went to meet this police officer. I met him about halfway down my driveway. And he began to explain to me that there had been a bad wreck out on I-40. And he told me then that Chase had died at the scene. That was on May the 29th, 2014. Just a few short years ago. When I first heard those words, it really, I was in shock. I can't begin to describe to you how it made me feel. It felt like all of the energy just drained out of my body. So there was a long, silent pause before I could gather my thoughts, and I looked at this officer. I looked him in the eye and I said, he's dead? I mean, it was just really hard to believe. And he dropped his head and he said, yes, sir. So he asked me, he said, is there anyone inside that we need to tell? And I said, yes, my wife and my other son are in the living room. And he said, would you like me to go in and tell them? I said, no, that's my job. He said, how about if I come in with you for support? And I said, sure. So I walked in the front door of my house, and my wife was sitting in the recliner right immediately to my right. And she looked up at me. And a split second later, this officer walked in behind me. And I'll never forget that look of terror on her face when she saw that police officer. Because she knew it was bad news. So it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, was to tell my wife that our son was dead. So we began to ask this officer what happened. And he told us, he said, Chase had been at a park over here in Cary, and he and two other friends, this young man was in the back seat. Chase had allowed this young woman who was 18 years old, who had never had a driver's license, to get behind the wheel of his car. Chase was a passenger in the front seat of his own car. And they left Cary, got out on I-40, headed eastbound, and got about to the Wade Avenue exit. And it was at the Wade Avenue exit, right in that general vicinity, they were in a turn, and this young lady began to come over on someone who was in her blind spot. I'm not sure if she drifted over or was intentionally making a lane change. But there was a car in her blind spot, and the driver of that car blew the horn. And apparently that startled her because she lost control of Chase's car at that instant. We feel like that she probably was startled and jerked the steering wheel to come back over. They were traveling about 70 miles per hour. The car began to spin out. They left the road. They impacted a tree. When they hit the tree, they were traveling about 60 miles per hour. The car impacted the tree on the driver's side rear door. It flipped up on its side, and it wrapped around the tree and it crushed the roof. Chase was killed instantly. It took firefighters almost an hour to get the three occupants out of the vehicle. They took the young woman who had been driving and the young man who was in the back seat to the hospital right away. And they survived their injuries and they recovered eventually in the hospital and were able to come home. The police began an investigation. They found marijuana in the purse of the young lady. They also found a THC metabolite in her bloodstream. THC is the active ingredient in marijuana. Approximately 7 months after the wreck, and only a few days prior to what would have been her first court appearance, that young lady, very pretty young lady, by the way, she poured gasoline all over the floor of her apartment, and then she ignited it. An eyewitness said that he heard a loud explosion. The next thing he saw was this young woman running from the door of her apartment, engulfed in flames. She left 2 suicide notes. She died the next day in the hospital. Choices. Who you associate with, the choices that you make, will shape your future. So now I want to talk to you about the power of love. You see, the power of love is the most powerful of all the superpowers that you possess. In fact, it's the power of love that motivates me to come out to events like this to talk to you. I love Chase too much to allow his death to have been in vain. I love Chase too much to allow his memory to fade, and I love all of you too much to allow anything to prevent me from getting out here and telling Chase's story so that you can benefit from it and hopefully avoid making those same kinds of mistakes. And I'm asking you today to allow the power of love to motivate you to use this last power that I'm going to talk about, and that's the power to intervene. You see, I know that there's someone in your life that you love. It could be your parents, it could be your grandparents, it could be a sibling, friends. And I know that there's someone who loves you. And so I'm going to ask you today to allow that power of love to motivate you to use the power to intervene. If you see someone about to drive impaired by alcohol or drugs, or you see someone who's driving distracted, texting and driving, if you can safely do so without putting your own life at risk, intervene in that situation. Do something about it. So this book I wrote about my son Chase. This is a story of his life. And that's his picture on the front cover. That was a gift that he left me. And you can go read that book and you can see all the things. You can see all of my parenting mistakes. You can see all the mistakes Chase made, all the mistakes his friends made. You can also find out what kind of person he was. He wasn't a bad person. You know, he was an Eagle Scout. He was a Christian. He was a good person. A lot of people think people that have a drug problem are bad people. They're just good people that made bad choices. So I want to encourage you to go download that book.